what do you see action learning as, and what do you think a learning practitioner should know about action learning?
Yes, the first thing I'd say is that it's quite possibly one of the most misunderstood approaches to learning. In fact, I think Reg Evans, the founder of Action Learning, said, it's such a simple concept that it took universities a full 30 years to fully misunderstand it, which is quite an interesting kind of quote. But seriously, I think for me, action learning is a simple concept, but to actually put it into practice in real organizations working on real challenges, organizations that have a history and an existing culture of a particular approach to training and education, it can be a challenge to get it to work in practice. So what is it as I see it? So I think everybody has their own interpretation, and that's okay.
If in doubt, go back to Reg, I found.
If in doubt, go back to Reg Evans. Yeah. So, I mean, here was a guy who was a research fellow in the Cambridge laboratories, working with Cavendish laboratories in Cambridge, working with Rutherford, a number of Nobel Prize-winning scientists. And really what he noticed in terms of the big scientific breakthroughs was that often they occurred when people were encouraged by Rutherford to leave their ego at the door, to come in and work with their ignorance. In other words, work with the not knowing. So if you think of that term, that's quite countercultural, isn't it, to what we even now, expect in a problem situation. But what he was saying is, when that happened, and when people focused on asking insightful questions, probing questions, to try and understand the problems that people faced, that often led to breakthroughs. And of course, the history of that group of scientists was remarkable in terms of some of the scientific breakthroughs.
It's not
back in the 30s.
Natural environment to expect people to part egos. These were big players doing big things, and so it must have taken a strong leadership to have created that learning environment.
I'm sure it did. And if you can look back you'll see it on the web. If you look at the Cambridge at the Cavendish laboratories, you'll see some great accounts actually of how it worked. But I mean, what I found fascinating was that here was a scientist who then went into, in his career, what we would now call organization development.
Yes.
So, he was tasked with, after the war, for the coal industry, recently nationalized, setting up the learning education function, if you like.
Yes.
And what he took into this was some of his learning from the laboratories, where he was recognizing that often it was the people at the coal face who knew the answers about how to improve the machinery or the efficiency. And in fact, rather than him, claiming to be the expert and setting up a kind of, an external business school or university, that the real learning should take place in the organization.